Hey guys, welcome to Megan Grace DIY. In this video, I'm going to cover how to do a slightly different type of mask. We've all seen the fitted mask or the pleated mask, but this mask goes up onto the face, is made of a lightweight fabric, and then also transforms into an elegant looking scarf. If this is your first stop by my channel, then welcome to the group. My name is Megan and I'm a college fashion professor and I've been sewing for almost my entire life. I'm going to walk you through this beautiful and simple project and I think you'll really be happy with the final outcome. Before we start cutting, let's talk about the type of fabric that works best for this project. You want to go with a chiffon or something that has a lightweight hand to it, so it'll drape nicely on your body. It's important to put a disclaimer here that a chiffon is not going to be as protective as cotton in using it in a mask, or as protective as a medical grade mask. But if you want to read more information on the protectiveness levels of different fabrics, please feel free to check out the link I've put in the description below. For the scarf portion of our mask, I've cut one big square that's 22 inches by 22 inches. If you happen to have a handkerchief lying around the house, you can definitely use that as a pattern, or you can measure it out yourself. If you're planning on using a handkerchief as your pattern, make sure you cut about an inch extra around the edge so you have enough fabric to finish off the edges. You will also need 2 pieces of elastic about 1/4 inches wide and 6 inches long, but you may need to adjust this given on the size of your head. The other piece of fabric we're going to cut is for the mask portion. This is a rectangle cut at 14.5 inches long and 9.5 inches wide. And you only need to cut this rectangle portion once. I'm going to show you how to fold it to create its own lining. Once you've cut both the square and the rectangle portions of your fabric, we're going to start off by finishing off the edges of the scarf. Right now my scarf has these kind of raw edges because I ripped my fabric to create the right size. If you like that look, feel free to leave it as is, but I'm going to show you 2 different ways that we can finish off the edges of the scarf that work really well for this type of lightweight fabric. Both of these ways can be accomplished on a regular sewing machine. If you happen to have a serger, you can also apply a rolled hem to the edges of the scarf. The first way you can finish off the edging of this lightweight fabric is to apply a zigzag stitch all along the raw edge, and then we're going to go back and we're going to fold it over and stitch it down. The zigzag stitch that I'm applying is about a 5 in width and a 3 in length. You may need to just keep an eye on your tension and adjust as needed. You can see my zigzag stitch is a little scrunchy at the beginning, so my tension was a little too tight. I loosened it up a bit and was able to sew a nice smooth zigzag all the way down the side of my fabric. Also, it's important to note that my fabric has a tiny bit of stretch to it, so I don't want to pull it too hard through the presser foot. That creates like a bubbling or rippling effect that really doesn't look pretty in the end. Here's what your zigzag stitch should look like once you complete the whole side. Next, we're going to fold it over and we're going to do a straight stitch to hold it down. I'm going to straight stitch down the entire side, sewing right on top of that zigzag seam. I'm using a brighter yellow. I know I usually sew in a contrast thread, but I think you should still be able to see this adequately on the video. While I finish up sewing this side, I just want to apologize if any of my voice levels sound a little bit off in this video. I'm trying to record in between loud landscaping and noisy neighbors, so, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For the second method of finishing off the edges of our scarf, I'm going to show you how to do a tiny rolled edge. For this type of finish, I started at the iron and I folded the edge over 1/4 inch and pressed it in place. Now I'm taking a straight stitch with a length of 3 and I'm stitching down the entire side. Both of these methods, they take the same amount of time. In my personal opinion, I like the second method better, but really it's up to you whichever way you want to finish off the edges. Once you've sewn down the entire side once, you're going to fold the edge over again about 1/4 inch, and you're going to stitch it the same exact way, a straight stitch with a length of 3. Another idea that can add a really nice touch of elegance to this type of mask is to finish off the scarf with a trim. You would do a zigzag stitch first and then stitch the trim on top of the fabric so it shows from the outside. And here's our finished small rolled hem from the inside and the outside. Whichever method you choose, right now you want to focus on finishing off all 4 sides of your scarf. And once all 4 sides are done, you're going to take it over to the iron and you're going to press it in place. Once your scarf is all finished, we're going to move on to the mask portion. So take your rectangle and you're going to apply one of the seam finishes we just learned to each end of the rectangle, meaning the sides that are 9.5 inches long. I'm choosing to apply the rolled hem option to each end of my mask, the 9.5 inch ends. These ends will eventually be folded in towards each other to create a lining and a hole for our filter. So to quickly repeat the steps that I did before, I'm folding over the edge at 1/4 of an inch and I'm going to stitch it in place with a straight stitch. Then once that's completed, I'm going to fold it one more time and stitch it again. And once I've completed one end of the mask, I'm going to repeat all these steps on the other side. I'm back at my ironing board with my freshly finished rectangle. See how both ends have a rolled hem, and I'm going to press them in place so it's nice and crisp. Now that we're ready to move on to the next step, I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to mark where the middle of this rectangle is, so approximately 6.5 inches. Take the right finished edge and fold it towards the middle pin. Then take your iron and press the fold in place. Repeat this step with the left side, but you're going to slightly overlap the two edges. What we're looking at now is going to be the inside of our mask. See how the two edges create a split in the middle of what is the lining? That'll be the hole for where we place our filter. With both the fold lines pressed in place, you're going to take the middle pin out and flip the mask over, and we're going to lay it flat. For the next step, you're going to need your elastic and a few pins to put it in place. Take one end of the elastic and pin it just to the inside of the fold line in the upper left-hand corner. Then take the other end and pin it just inside the fold line on the upper right-hand corner. Because the elastic is slightly shorter than the length of the mask at this point in time, it's going to pull the fabric together a little bit awkwardly. I'm going to show you how we're going to get around that when we sew it, but don't be worried if it doesn't lay flat. Take your second piece of elastic and line one end up with the bottom left-hand corner and the other end with the bottom right-hand corner. Pin them in place. During this step, you also want to check and make sure your elastic is not twisted in any way before you pin it. Once you've pinned all 4 ends of the elastic in place, you're going to fold the edge of the mask towards the center along the fold line, but you're going to be folding it inside out. Since the elastic is slightly pulling the edge of the mask, you're going to have to fold one side, smooth it out, make sure it's nice and straight, pin it, and then go to the second side. Again, smooth it out, make sure it's nice and straight, shifting the elastic back and forth to get all the pins properly laid. The finished edge on the left-hand side is going to gently overlay the finished edge on the right-hand side. And if you see here, as I pull the elastic a little bit straight, the end of the mask does straighten out. Repeat this step with the other side of the mask at the bottom of the screen, and then I'll meet you over at the sewing machine. Take the upper right-hand corner of the mask and place it under your presser foot with the edge of the mask right up against the edge of the presser foot. So we're stitching at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. See the bubble on the bottom half of the mask? Stitch all the way to the midpoint and then worry about flattening that bubble out. The elastic will easily shift downward and allow you to sew a nice straight line on the bottom half of the mask. Once you reach the bottom corner, it's really important that you backstitch even 2 or 3 times because you'll be locking your elastic in place. When you've completed one side, you're going to repeat these steps on the other side. These seams are going to end up on the inside of the mask, so in my opinion, you don't have to seam finish them, but if you're using an especially sheer fabric, I would recommend maybe putting a zigzag finish just to clean it up a bit. Once you've completed sewing both sides of the mask, we're going to head back to the ironing board. Here's our mask up to this point, and it's inside out. We're going to flip it right side out, and you're going to use the elastic to pull the corners nice and straight. Once it's flipped, we're going to use the tip of our iron to press the seams that we just sewed nice and flat. Once it's fully pressed, we're ready for the last step to create the mask, which is to sew in place our pleats. For the first pleat, I'm going to pinch about 1 inch down from the midway line and pull it towards the top of the mask. And I'm going to pin the pleat in place. Then I'm going to repeat this step about 1 inch below the halfway point, again pulling the pleat up and pinning it in place. If you take the mask and flip it over really quick, you'll see the slit on the back side that can be used to insert a filter. I've heard a lot of people say they really stress over the perfection of the pleats. Please don't stress over this part. The pleats will be undone when it's on your face, so it really doesn't matter if they're super perfect. Once you've got your pleats all pinned and pressed, we're going to hop over to the sewing machine and do a straight stitch down each side to hold the pleats in place. If you see me lifting my presser foot, it's just because I'm about to get a little bump in my pleat and I don't want that. So I lift the presser foot to smooth it out and then put it back down to continue sewing. If you've made it this far, great job because we're almost done. Take your scarf with all 4 sides finished and you're going to fold it in half diagonally. Press that line in place. Then I'm going to fold the scarf in half, touching the right-hand corner to the left-hand corner, and I'm going to place a pin where the halfway mark is. I'm going to also mark the halfway point for the mask, folding it in half and placing a pin where the fold is. Line up the 2 pins and overlap the mask by just 1/4 of an inch onto the scarf. You're going to pin the mask to the scarf and prepare to sew them together. Our final step is just attaching the mask to the scarf using a straight stitch. If you don't want to use the machine for this point and want to hide the seam a little bit more, you can go ahead and attach it with a slip stitch. And if you don't know how to do a slip stitch, I'm going to attach a link above. And ta-da! Your mask scarf combo is all complete. To put your mask on, start by tying the 2 ends of the scarf behind your neck. To wear this mask as just the scarf option, you're going to fold the mask underneath the scarf. It's small enough that it sits right underneath the scarf on top of your chest. This is why using that lightweight fabric is really important. You won't feel the extra fabric sitting underneath the scarf. But once you're ready to wear the mask, just pull it up and put the elastics around your ears. And then you can pull the pleats open so it fits underneath your neck. I ended up shortening my elastic to about 5.5 inches, but you have to do what works best for you. Also, if you want to be able to pinch the nose, I've added a link below for adhesive nose strips that you can easily put on the inside of the mask. And once you finish this project, you have a really elegant option to wear a face covering at the office place or out on date night. Congratulations on making it to the end of another tutorial, and thanks for stopping by Megan Grace DIY. If you'd like to help support my channel, you can do so by hitting the subscribe button and sharing this video with anyone that you think it might be helpful to. You can also check me out on Facebook, Pinterest, and Instagram at Megan Grace DIY. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section below. And as always, happy sewing!